Orally transmitted teachings, Ongi Kuden, in Japanese on Buddhism Lesson 4. Bis the Lotus Sutra, the first Hermeneutical Model Part 2, the Essential or Definitive Teachings, Honman, in Japanese the Essential or Definitive Teachings, Honman, in Japanese, that make up the second part of the Lotus Sutra are the last 14 chapters of the Sutra of Sutras. Honman may be studied through 5 themes. The Buddha chooses the Bodhisattvas and female Bodhisattvas on earth. The revered Shakyamuni, after the call for applications launched in Chapter 11, Hodo, appearance of the treasure tower, chose, at last, the karmically qualified disciples to perform Kosen Rafu. These are the Bodhisattvas and female Bodhisattvas when earth appeared from the 11th to the 22nd chapters of the Lotus Sutra, to whom he entrusted the mission of Han Kosen Rafu or Definitive Kosen Rafu or Mappo Kosen Rafu. The Shaku Kosen Rafu, for Zoho, is entrusted to the Bodhisattva Medicine King, Yakuo, in Japanese. This entire knighting ceremony takes place in an atmosphere of commitment from the Buddhist deities, Bodhisattvas and Buddhas of the 10 directions to protect the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra during the said apocalyptic era of Mappo. It should be noted that the Buddha refused to entrust the Han Kosen Rafu, or Kosen, Rafu for short, to his immediate disciples, led by Mange Shiri and Fugen, for the simple reason that they were not qualified for this perilous mission. The Tathagata also rejected the offer of the Bodhisattvas from other worlds. These beings ignorant of the realities of our world, saha. On the eternity of the life of the Buddha Shakyamuni the Great Assembly's legitimate doubts. In Chapter 15, Rising from the Earth, the Great Assembly had doubts about the veracity of the words of the Buddha, who attained Buddhahood at Bodh Gaya about 40 years ago and who reported that he had guided and taught all this multitude of Bodhisattvas and female Bodhisattvas. The Bodhisattva Maitreya, the ad hoc spokesman of this assembly, after telling the Tathagata that, it was as if a young man of 25 saw an old man of 100 years old and said, "Here is my son," practically summoned him to explain the matter, to enlighten them. The Buddha explains, finally, his distant enlightenment. In Chapter 16, Juryo, duration of the Buddha's life, the Buddha will erase the doubt that has taken hold of the Buddha of a part of the assembly. He first returns to popular beliefs and then instructs the said audience on the eternity of his life as a Buddha. The Buddha informs the Great Assembly that from the infinite past when he became a Buddha, he has not ceased to appear here and in other worlds to propagate Buddhist law by opportune means. He never neglected this work of a Buddha. Let us listen to the Tathagata himself speaking of the eternity of his life. Since then I have been constantly in this Saha world, preaching the law, teaching and converting. And elsewhere, I have led and helped living beings in hundreds of billions, tens, thousands, millions of Nayudas and Ashamkyas of land. This, a Buddha's work, I have never neglected it for a single moment. At the heart of Juryo lie 3 important teachings: the inherent nature of Buddhahood, the possibility of attaining Buddhahood in this life, the land of Saha is the land of the Buddha. The devotional acts of some Buddhas and Bodhisattvas towards the Lotus Sutra. These are the Bodhisattvas Fukyo, Yakuo, sensitive to the sounds of the world, Bodhisattva wonderful sound, wonderfulking ornament or Palefero, Fugen. The never contemptuous Bodhisattva, Fukyo, in Japanese, the eponymous Chapter 20 Fukyo represents the deep compassion of the Bodhisattva. Fukyo's attitude of deference to all living things is the core of Buddhist practice. The Bodhisattva Medicine King, Yakuo, in Japanese, the eponymous Chapter 23 Yakuo, in the course of many kalpas, offered himself as a holocaust for the reproduction of Buddhist law. This probably explains why the Buddha entrusts to him in eponymous Chapter 23, the Shaku Kosen Rafu of Zoho. Yakuo appeared in the 6th century under the identity of Jiante, in China, and Dengyo in the following century, in Japan. The Bodhisattva Wonderful Sound, the eponymous Chapter 24 Wonderful Sound as a Bodhisattva who takes many forms to propagate Buddhist law. The Bodhisattva sensitive to the sounds of the world, the eponymous Chapter 25 also called Avalokiteshvara, sensitive to sounds of the world is a Bodhisattva who succeeds in solving the problem of anyone in difficulty who has heard of him and calls him to the rescue. Wonderful sound and sensitive to the sounds of the world must be perceived as bodhisattvas, who symbolize Buddhist anthropomorphism, that is to say the projection of bodhisattvas' qualities onto men. The Bodhisattva king of medicine, Myo-Shogun, in Japanese, Palefero, in Znyafo, both one of the languages and ethnicities of Côte d'Ivoire. The eponymous Chapter 27 relates the conversion of this follower of Brahmanism to Buddhism. The Bodhisattva Universal Wisdom Fugen, in Japanese, the eponymous Chapter 28. Fugen is, along with Manjushiri, one of the two leaders of the Bodhisattvas of the provisional teaching who serve the Buddha. The benefits of the Lotus Sutra. In Chapter 17, Distinctions and Benefits, the Buddha first establishes a hierarchy in attaining Buddhahood by his disciples, and then discusses the benefits of belief in Chapter 18, Benefits of Joyful Acceptance. The Buddha then teaches us that the benefits obtained by the 50th person who receives the Lotus Sutra by word of mouth are in way comparable to the benefits received from the hands of a distributor of goods. That is to say, they are far superior. These benefits are the solutions to the needs that Abraham Maslow's pyramid would not even have imagined. In Chapter 19, the Buddha teaches us that people who adhere, recite, keep the Lotus Sutra, and propagate Buddhist law will not only have transcendental powers but will be endowed with great wisdom. Chapters 23 and 25 also edify us on the benefits granted by Buddhist practice. The superiority of the Lotus Sutra over all other sutras in Honman. The Lotus Sutra demonstrates its superiority over all other sutras in fivefold terms: the quality of the people it propagates, the benefits it confers, the benefits enjoyed by those who adhere to it, the rarity of encountering it, and the 10 comparisons of Chapter 23. Inventory of the chapters of the Lotus Sutra. Chapter 1. Introduction, jō, in Japanese Chapter 2. Timely means, hoben, in Japanese Chapter 3. Analogies and Prophecies, Hu, in Japanese Chapter 4. Faith and Understanding, Shinj, in Japanese Chapter 5. The Parable of Medicinal Herbs, Yakusog, in Japanese Chapter 6. The Prophecy of Enlightenment delivered to 4 disciples, Jukyo, in Japanese Chapter 7. The Parable of the Illusory City and Dumonantigui, Joyu, in Japanese Chapter 8. The Prophecy of Enlightenment for Purna and 5 other disciples, Goyakudsho, in Japanese Chapter 9. Prophecies to Monks and Confirmed Disciples, Ninko, in Japanese Chapter 10. The Masters of the Law, Hosshi, in Japanese Chapter 11. The Apparition of the Treasures Tower, Kenhodo, in Japanese Chapter 12. Princess Ozawa and Devadatta, Devadatta, in Japanese Chapter 13. Exhortation to Practice, Kanji, in Japanese Chapter 14. Peaceful Practices, Anrakujo, in Japanese Chapter 15. Rising from the Ground, Yajutsu, in Japanese Chapter 16. Lifespan, of the Tathagata Shakyamuni, Nyorai Juryo, in Japanese Chapter 17. Distinction in Benefits, Fumbetsu Kudoku, in Japanese Chapter 18. The Benefits of the Felt Joy, Zuike, in Japanese Chapter 19. The Benefits of the Law Masters, Hosshi jinriki, in Japanese Chapter 20. The Never Contemptuous Bodhisattva jõ-Fukyo Bosastu, in Japanese Chapter 21. The Supernatural Powers of the Tathagata, Nyorai jinriki, in Japanese Chapter 22. Dharma Transmission, Zokuren, in Japanese Chapter 23. The Earlier Acts of Bodhisattva King of Medicine, Yakuo, in Japanese Chapter 24. The Bodhisattva Wonderful Sound, Nyoon Bosastu, in Japanese Chapter 25. The Universal Gate of Bodhisattva Sensitive to the Sounds of the World, Canon Fumen, in Japanese Chapter 26. The Dharani Chapter 27. The Earlier Acts of Wonderful Bodhisattva Ornament or Palefero, Myo-Shoguno, in Japanese Chapter 28. The Encouragement of the Bodhisattva Universal Wisdom, Fugen Bosastu Kanspitsu, in Japanese. After ingesting this educational capsule, it will be possible for you to deepen your knowledge on this theme by referring to my sutras or writings of a Buddha, in Sanskrit, where it is developed at length. These sutras are available, in French, the original version, in American English and in German in paperback and Kindle books on all Amazon sales sites. Regarding the Amazon KDP links to my sutras, please refer to my TikTok or Facebook profiles or even to Lesson 11 of my teachings. All my videos are compiled on my 3 YouTube channels, Kosen Rufu TV, English Kosen Rufu TV and Kosen Rufu Well. For the links to these channels, see my bio or type the title of the channel of your choice in the Google search bar.